You know that feeling when you feel kind of trapped by your own wants and desires? It's something we all go through, right? But what if I told you that the key to dealing with that struggle was actually written down hundreds of years ago? Well, that's what we're looking at today. A really powerful spiritual text from the 16th century that gets right to the heart of desire, suffering, and how to find a little bit of peace.
So right off the bat, the text throws this challenging idea at us. It asks us to really think about this question. It suggests that, all the things we chase after, the stuff we want the most, what if they aren't sources of freedom at all? What if they're actually the very walls of a prison that we're building around ourselves, brick by brick?
All right, so where does all this inner conflict actually come from? Well, the author has a very specific name for it, the appetites. And honestly, this one word is the key to unlocking the whole text. Because according to this guy, these appetites aren't just, simple wants. They are the direct source of our inner torment.
Okay, so let's dig into that definition a little more. When the text talks about an appetite, it's not just about feeling hungry or having a fleeting thought. It's specifically a voluntary desire for something that isn't, well, God. And to really drive the point home, the author uses this incredibly intense analogy, the torture of the rack. I mean, just picture that for a second. That constant, relentless pulling with absolutely no relief in sight. That's how this text wants us to see our relationship with our own unchecked desires.
And to make this whole idea of torment even more real, the author doesn't just stop with that one analogy. Nope. He uses a whole series of really vivid and frankly painful metaphors to show us exactly how these appetites chip away at our soul day in and day out. Okay, this first metaphor is it's so visceral. The text says that trying to find rest in your desires is like lying naked on thorns and nails. I mean, can you imagine? There's absolutely no comfort in that. Instead of peace, every single movement, every point of contact just brings more sharp, immediate pain. The message here is crystal clear. You're not going to find any real comfort there, just constant irritation and pain. And then the imagery gets even more intense. It's not just that the appetites prick you. They start to consume you. The idea of fire among thorns. Well, that suggests something way more destructive, right? It's this fast-spreading anguish that just burns through everything, leaving nothing but ash in its wake. It's the kind of hunger that ends up destroying the very person who's feeling it.
And the last metaphor really hits on this feeling of just utter exhaustion. The endless chase for these appetites becomes this heavy burden, a crushing weight. It doesn't give you energy, it just drains you completely. This image perfectly captures that spiritual fatigue, that feeling of being pinned down by the very things you think you want.
Now, to tie all these metaphors together with a real human story, the text brings up a classic cautionary tale, the story of Samson. I'm sure you've heard it. His life is held up as this perfect and really tragic example of what happens when anyone, no matter how strong they are, becomes a slave to their appetites. And you can see his downfall happen in these really clear steps. First, you've got Samson at his peak. He's the strongest man alive, a mighty judge, a figure of incredible power. But then, step 2, he gets tangled up in his desires, his appetites. And that leads directly to step 3, where he's weakened and literally blinded. And the final stage, he ends up a slave, chained to a millstone, just grinding away at this repetitive, soul-crushing task. His whole story is basically a powerful allegory for what these desires can do to us.
So, the really crucial takeaway from Samson's story is this two-step process. See, first, giving in to these appetites. It doesn't make you stronger. It's the opposite. It weakens your will and it totally blinds your judgment. And it's only after you're weakened and blinded that the second part can kick in. The real torment, the affliction, the spiritual equivalent of being chained to that millstone.
Okay, but here's the good news. This isn't just a manual on misery. After painting this really bleak picture, the text makes a huge pivot. It offers an invitation. It shows us a completely different path, one that doesn't lead to torment, but to real abundance.
And the contrast between these two paths is, well, it's black and white. On the one hand, you have the appetites. They offer you constant thirst, a hunger for things that can never really satisfy, what the text calls what is not bread. It's basically all work and no payoff. But then, on the other hand, you have what the Spirit offers, cool waters, rich wine and milk, and this genuine soul-deep delight in abundance.
And this is where the text turns and asks a question directly to the reader, directly to us. It says, why do you waste all your energy, your life force, chasing things that are guaranteed to leave you feeling empty? It's really a plea,
It's asking us to just pause, to listen for a second, and to choose the path that leads to actual, soul-level delight.
So what's the whole point of turning away from these appetites? It's not about self-denial just for the sake of it. Not at all. The real goal, the ultimate promise of taking this other path, is finding true, deep, lasting rest.
This is really the promise that ties the whole thing together. It's a call meant for anyone who feels that labor and that burden we talked about earlier, the weight of their own desires. The text promises that if you can turn away from that constant struggle, you're not going to find a void. You're going to find relief. You'll find rest for your soul.
And just like that, the argument comes completely full circle. Remember how it all started with that metaphor of a heavy burden? Well, the solution is a release from that very same weight. It's not about piling on more rules or restrictions, it's about letting go of the exhausting job of chasing appetites. And what you get in return is spiritual refreshment and a peace that actually lasts.
So the text leaves us with this final, lingering question. And it feels just as powerful today as it must have back in the 16th century. I mean, our world is a machine that constantly creates new things for us to want, new appetites to chase. So the question this ancient wisdom leaves us with is simple, but it's also incredibly profound. In the middle of all that noise, all that wanting, where will you seek your rest?